Rabbi Blech is an internationally recognized speaker, religious leader, writer, and teacher. There's a cliche, jack of all trades and master of none. Rabbi Blech he gives a twist. He's the jack of all trades and master of all.
Wow.
He's a 10th generation rabbi, and he had a lot of zechus this past year, where his son finally decided to become a rabbi and continue the legacy. Actually, 11 generations. The rabbi was, initially he was the rabbi emeritus of the Young Israel of Oceanside for 37 years. And it seems like he did a lot of work in parallel with these rabbinic responsibilities. You looked at the website and it said he's written 19 books. He told me that he has to update. He's now at 23 books. Half a million copies have been distributed as of now. And then I saw he has a book he wrote in the Sistine Chapel, where he, the book, Rabbi.
Wow.
Where he does he comes up with a fascinating explanation of Michelangelo's work, and he tells me they're possibly going to make a movie on it. So you may see the rabbi on Netflix. The rabbi's most famous book, as I understand, is called Understanding Judaism: The Basics of Deed and Creed. This was chosen by the Union of Orthodox Jewish Congregations as the single best book on Judaism in our generation. He's been on the Oprah Winfrey Show. He writes for the New York Times, Newsweek, Newsday, and obviously there's been multiple scholarly writings that have been published. As an educator, he is the recipient of American Educator of the Year Award. He's a professor of Talmud at YU. He plays a very big role with Aish, writing material. And he's lectured all over the world. I don't think there's a country he hasn't been in. I mean, I didn't know there was a Jewish community in Tokyo. Okay, Singapore I knew, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa. And he's been a rabbi, a scholar in residence in hundreds of synagogues. As a religious leader, he was the president of the National Council of Young Israel Rabbis. He was an officer of the New York Board of Rabbis, the Rabbinical Council of America. He's pretty much done it all. In a national survey, Rabbi Blech was ranked number 16 in the listing of the 50 most influential Jews in America. We're very privileged to have Rabbi Blech today. I know the rabbi from a synagogue on the west side of the base, and I've heard him speak on numerous occasions. And he's one of those rabbis where you'll always walk away. I mean, it's like, with me, I'll talk personally, so I'm projecting, I guess. You don't always walk away. I don't always walk away with a message. I've never ever walked away from a shir of his without a message. I want to thank the rabbi and rebbitzin for giving us the opportunity to use your place. I obviously want to thank Ethan, who's put this together year after year. And I want to thank all of you who attended. May Daniella's neshama have a special aliyah from today's Dvar Torah. Rabbi.
Thank you so very much. That was an incredible introduction. Of all the introductions I've ever had, that was certainly, definitely the most recent one. I find it a special privilege to be able to speak where it's a great mitzvah. This is Zecher, this is a memorial for a remarkable human being. I remember the story well, and may it be in the schus of Danielle, and may it be for all of us a wonderful way in which we are about to introduce the Yamim Noraim, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I want to begin by sharing with you a story, because it will be the direction in which I will be going in my talk. I've been teaching at Yeshiva University for over 50 years. You will imagine that I must have started at the age of 10, right? I don't know how that's possible. I can't believe it myself. But in the earlier years, there was a tradition that Yeshiva University had. I don't think they have it any longer. But you know that there are many elderly Jews, successful Jews, professionals, businessmen, who in years past, when they were young, didn't have the opportunity to gain a proper Jewish education. It wasn't affordable, or it wasn't available to them, and they would like, later on in life, to learn. They came to the registrar and they asked if it would be possible for them to sit in on some courses, and arrangements were made for a few people. I don't know what was the basis of the decision. I'm sure they supported the university, but there were other considerations as well. And invariably, they would send these people into my fundamentals class because they did not have the background to study Talmud in depth, but they would come into a course that I continue to teach to this day on fundamentals of Judaism. Every year, the first session, I would look around and there were freshmen, young people, obviously anxious to begin their college careers, but one or two, and sometimes even three, elderly gentlemen. You will ask why gentlemen, that's a separate subject I can't get into. Yeshiva is, the Jewish Studies program is male-oriented for whatever reason, but that's a separate subject. And invariably, at the end of the first session, I would seek out those people who looked to be not college age and taking the course for credit, but who would be in their 50s and their 60s. And I would ask them to stay so that I get some understanding of who they are. And one year, this elderly gentleman, I said, would you please stay? And I asked him, who are you? And he said, I am Dr. So-and-so. And I said, Dr. So-and-so, are you perhaps related to the foremost cardiologist in the world who is the same name? And he said, yes, that's me. That's me. And I could not believe it. I said, what in the world are you doing here? And he said, I will tell you, Rabbi, I have been practicing medicine for many years. For the fact that you know my name, obviously you know I've been quite successful. I'm well known. But I found one thing. The more I know about the body, the more I know about human beings, I realize there is more to us than the external, than the body, than the parts that I deal with. There is something, I know enough Hebrew, he said, and Yiddish, to be aware that it is called the neshama. But I find myself amazed that I know nothing about that, the soul, when I know so much about the body. And I would like to learn. I want to know what that aspect of our being that is called the soul and obviously plays a vital role, what that has to our lives, to our being, to our definition. And I said, I'm very glad to hear that you want to do this. Are you sure you will be able to be a part of the class? Because it's continuous, that is to say, the material builds on itself. And he assured me, and subsequently did, change his surgical schedule around. This was a class that met once a week, and he, unlike the students registered for the course, never missed a class. Never missed a class. And at the end of the year, he said to me, Rabbi, I want to thank you because now I know. Now I know the answer to the question. That's remarkable. And I want to tell you what it is in particular that struck him and that is so relevant to us by discussing first a famous law. You know that Judaism is filled with brachot, with blessings. It is a way of inserting God awareness into everyday activities. And before you eat that, before you eat anything, before we do anything, is there a blessing for the czar? My God, there is even a blessing for leaving the bathroom. I mean, we have blessings for everything. But I need you to know something. I will share with you a piece of information that's remarkable, and many Jews don't know this. Most of the blessings that we have, and there are, does anyone here, other than the rabbi, because you have a head start, how many blessings we say, every Jew who observes the law says every single day? 100. There are 100 blessings. It just works out that way. We say 100 blessings a day, but they are all rabbinic. That is to say, the rabbis decided people needed reminders, needed God's talk, and so 100 different ways we have a Baruch Atah Hashem. But there are two exceptions to the rule. There are two and only two blessings that are biblical. That is to say, they come from the Torah, so you had better do it. If you're an observant Jew, if you're concerned with what God says in the Bible, then these are super blessings. And what are these two blessings? Very good, I heard it. That's one. So far you get 50%. We'll see if you can get the other in a moment. He said the benching that we do after a full meal comes from the Torah source, v'yochalta, you shall eat, v'savata, and be full, and uverachta, and you shall bless the Lord your God. So that is a biblical law, and that's why benching is so important. What is the second, the other blessing that is midoraisa from the Torah? The blessing, but unfortunately, if you don't daven every day, you don't do it. It's crucial. The blessing for Torah. I do not mean when you get called for an aliyah, because you might end up saying that blessing once or twice a year if you're in one of these big shuls. I don't mean that. Do you know that the Siddur, daily prayers, begin with a short selection from Torah, from Mishnah, and from Talmud, but preceding that, we say a bracha. As a matter of fact, we say 3 blessings. And those blessings are biblically ordained. You got to do it if you want to be the right path. So, there are 2 exceptions to the rule, and I was told you're all young professionals, smart people. I'd like to know, can anyone figure out what made these 2 so special that they are exceptions to the rule? In other words, everything else, and I can give you a whole, what would you like? Thank you. That was bagels and lox, and that's holy on Sunday morning. What makes these two special? Anyone would like to take a shot at that? Yes.
So it's interesting that you say the prayer either before or after. So the Torah.
I will get to that, yeah. That's a separate aspect of the way in which the law is fulfilled. But I'm asking a simpler question. Only these two things. Now, there are wonderful things that happen to us in our lives. There are fantastic things that we do that get a blessing, but they're not biblically commanded, because God said, all right, you do it, you don't do it. It was the rabbis who asked for it, but it's a later stage in the development of Jewish history. What I'm asking, Rabbi, you can't answer that. No. You're like the major leagues, and we're not going to let you do this. Sorry. The answer goes to the essence of who we are. We, going back to the story of Bereshit, are two things basically. We are a body and we are a soul. God created Adam from the dust of the earth, is what it says. It is metaphorical. It's not from dust, it means physical. There is a physical reality to our being. That is merely an external physical component. We are created in the image of God. I would like to understand something. Now, you have red hair, and point to other people who have brown hair and to someone who doesn't have any hair. We are all in the image of God. Well, what does God look like? Does he look like you, or does he look like you, or that? No. We are in the image of God means that after God formed us, all different so we can be recognizable, all different for a host of reasons. But then God blew into Adam of his spirit. Of his spirit represents our essence, our true being, our neshama. Let me ask you a question. Have any of you ever been in the room when someone passed away? It's a remarkable experience, yes, and as a rabbi, of course, I have. And what is that moment when you witness the transference of life from here to there, the soul leaving? It's the last breath. The last breath is remarkable. It gives you a feeling of watching the person who a moment ago was the one that you love, the one that you know, the one with history and memory, the real you. Then all of a sudden, in English, in proper English, what do we call it when somebody died? He expired. That comes from the Latin. It is interesting that the Latin is rooted in the biblical truth of the difference between life and death. Because spiritus means breath. And expire means to ex the spiritus, to ex the breath. That the breath leaves. Which breath? That's you! That breath is the uniqueness of a human being. It is Tzelem Elokim. It is the essence of a person. It is God who makes you alive, but when that aspect of your being leaves, it's a corpse. And all of a sudden, you're not looking at the person anymore who you know, who you love. It's just a body. I want to show you something about the English language. It's remarkable. That's when a person expires. Suppose I want to give you some of God's Spirit, some of that which defines you and your neshama. And I talk to you in Torah language, as I'm doing now. It is my hope that rather than expire, what is the opposite of the word expire? Inspire. Inspire. I hopefully am inspiring you. Now, there is a tremendous mistake that people make, I mean Jews. What's the holidays coming up? Rosh Hashanah. What do we celebrate on Rosh Hashanah? The creation of the world. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Did you know that? It is incorrect. We do not commemorate the creation of the world because the world is meaningless until and unless God blew into a human being that he formed, his spirit, and God is walking around in you. God is in you. God is in every one of us. Am I inspiring you? The world was created in Elul. There were 6 days of creation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And on the 6th day, human beings were created. And by human beings, I mean that God did what? Blew into a body, a physical piece of meat, his spirit. And so all of a sudden there was a God representative on earth, and that's you, and that's me. All of a sudden we carry divinity within us. And Rosh Hashanah is the day in the story of creation in Bereshit when a soul appeared. A body that had a neshama is now a human being. Get ready for this. I'm going to do something. I'm going to look foolish. I don't care. You will now understand the main mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah in a totally different way. Because what do we do on Rosh Hashanah to indicate that that's the day on which God blew of his spirit into flesh and turned us into humans? It is that breath that inspires us to life, and it is that breath when we lose it that we expire. And it is that breath that we commemorate on Rosh Hashanah that is, to my mind, the best. I know there are at least 10 different interpretations depending on what sermon the rabbi gave the previous year, and he wants to change it to something else this year to have something to talk about. But if you want to know the truth, the real meaning, it is, think to yourself that God took that which is inanimate and animated it with his spirit, with his essence, and that makes you human. Wow, that's shofar. And now let me tell you the next step in this process. I'm going to get back to, I want to see if you remember, the 2 blessings with which I started. And again, the 2 blessings are, tell me again, tell me. The 2 blessings are benching after food and Torah. And Torah after what? Before learning Torah. I get to that, before and after. We are a duality. We are a duality of body and of neshama. And each one of these parts of our being needs sustenance, nourishment, life. Why do we make a bracha just for these 2? Because these are the 2 things that define our existence, that define our life. And we bless God for giving us the two things that we need to keep them alive. One is food. Your body needs food. But I try to emphasize this as strongly as I can. I'm not going to do it by screaming, but I'm going to do it by stopping and making you think. Just as your body needs food, your neshama needs spiritual nourishment. It needs spiritual nourishment. If you don't have food for the body, you die. And if you don't have food for the neshama, you want to die because your life has no purpose and has no meaning. I read this, well, did you read 2 weeks ago, the front page story in the New York Times was that teenage children are given about 10 different pills, many, 10 pills, because they're depressed. I just got this yesterday from the council, what is that, the National Health Bureau, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name. 1 out of 10 young people today wants to commit suicide, and 1 out of 5 have tried. What is happening? What is happening is that in a crazy world, especially after the pandemic, people have lost the understanding of life's meaning, and they are depressed. 70% of adults are on at least 2 prescription pills in America today. Most of which are related to mental and emotional. Get me a Xanax, get me a, keep going. And that is because they're not physically troubled as much as they are emotionally, mentally. That is not a good word. The best word is they're neshama troubled. Their neshama, their souls, need nourishment. Let me tell you a story about the Yehudi, who was a famous rabbi about 150 years ago. And he had a unique skill that was mystical, that was incomprehensible to almost everybody, but he did it. The Yehudi was able to look at his disciples, his students, and he would take a look and say, you didn't learn any Torah today. Or to another student, you didn't daven mincha today. He was invariably right. And they said to him, how in the world could you do that? How could you understand and know what I did spiritually? And he said, I don't understand how you can't do it. It's simple. He said, we need 2 things. He said the same thing that I've just told you. Now, if a person does not eat for a month, it's hard to imagine, let's say 3 weeks, 2 weeks, then people say, what's wrong with you? What's wrong? Something's wrong. Of course something is wrong, because he or she has deprived himself or herself, I have to be careful today, I have to do both, right, or else you get into trouble, has been deprived of physical nourishment. And that has an obvious consequence. But what people don't understand is, suppose a person doesn't do anything that gives him life, but gives him a reason to live. If you don't eat, I just said to you, for 3 weeks, everybody knows. He says, what's wrong with you? If you don't eat for a week, your best friend says, what is wrong with you? You look sick, what's wrong? if you don't eat for a day, your mother says, something's wrong, right? You are physically anorexic. You can be, a new term made up by Blech, you can be spiritually anorexic, and there are consequences. But you don't see it, except you say, my life is miserable, I don't know why I'm still here, I can't stand it, I better go see a doctor. Now the Rambam Maimonides said that 90% of illness is not physically caused, but caused emotionally, spiritually. Do you ever make a Misha Berach? Of course. What do you pray for? Two things for the person. Refuat HaNefesh or Refuat HaGuf. What is that? Refuat HaNefesh, healing for the soul, and Refuat HaGuf, healing for the body. Wow! You need those two things, and we ignore those two. I was waiting for you to tell the Rebbitzin one of the prime experiences of my life goes back to the late 80s when I got a call from Lubavitch, and they said to me, the Rebbe wants to see you. I said, why does the Rebbe want to see me? I had no contact with Lubavitch. They said, he has a mission for you. And I said, what, where? Said, he wants you to go to the Far East, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Bangkok, Hong Kong, Tokyo, and speak to Jews. We will set up the venues where you will give speeches. And what should I talk about? I said, this was wrong of me. I said, I'm not a good fundraiser. I assumed he wanted me to raise money. No, chas v'shalom. No. He wanted me to talk about Judaism and influence Jews. And I went. I spoke to 20 people and to 20,000 people, depending on the venue, all over in these places. When I came back, the Rebbe wanted to see me. He knew everything that had happened. He asked me first, is there something that you need? I said, no. There's something that you really need desperately. And I said, my older daughter is not yet married. He looked, he thought, he said she will be married this year. That year, she got married to the son of a rabbi in Australia that I had only met because I was on this tour. But then he said to me, your mission is to go and teach Judaism, and I want you to know, you don't speak Yiddish, but I must say Yiddish and I'll translate. He said, Menschen sterben von Hunger. In the world, people are dying of hunger. And I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand the bridge, and I couldn't understand what he was saying. Nobody's dying of hunger today, unless you're sending me into the far reaches of a place where there is no food, but that wasn't what he was saying. What did he mean? And then he explained, Menschen sterben von Hunger, people are dying spiritually of a hunger of their souls. Their souls need to feel the beauty that is imparted by Torah, the beauty that is imparted by doing good, the beauty of the actions that Daniella felt that moved her in her life to do the things she had to do, because a person who is filled with spirituality knows that this is the way to live. This is what must be done. Do you know that in the temple, originally the Mishkan in the desert, there were items that represented certain ideas and ideals. Every one of the holy items in the temple was a concept. Two of them were ultimates. And they were the Aron, and the Aron was the ark, not like we have in the shul, but the ark, which had the luchot in it, the Ten Commandments, the tablets, which are the key to all of Torah. and the shulchan. The shulchan, the table, which had loaves of bread. Isn't that interesting? Two things, the Aron and the shulchan. What are those two things? Exactly what we've been talking about, right? The physical survival, that's the shulchan, and the spiritual. Yes. Do you know that the prophets speak of God making a covenant of fire with the Jewish people? How do you say fire in Hebrew? Esh. Thank you. And Esh, two letters. Once you've started, you got to finish this. And the two letters are Aleph and Shin. The covenant with God is a covenant of fire, which is Aleph, Aron, and Shin, Shulchan. Wait, you're not finished yet. I wish I had a blackboard, but I don't. I will give you an imaginary blackboard. What is the first word in the Torah? Bereshit. What are the first two letters of Bereshit? Beis Resh. What are the last two letters of Bereshit? Yud Tov. That makes a word. The word is Brit. Brit is covenant. Brit, Beis Resh, Yud Tov. And what's in the middle? Aleph Shin Esh. A covenant of fire. This concept is built into the very first word in the Torah. It's a covenant of fire. This is the covenant that we must make because we need it desperately in order to live, because if we don't inspire ourselves, we expire. Wow. Wow. So how am I doing in terms of time? Okay. If I see one person close their eyes, I finish. Not, I still want to add one more thing. I want to add the words of a Rebbe, who was asked the most famous question that's been asked millions of times to determine whether you're an optimist or a pessimist. If you see a glass of water and it's half full with water, half full, what would you say? Would you say it's half empty or it's half full? Right? Is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? And you get all permutations of and reasons why you would say it's half empty or it's half full. And he asked the Rebbe, and he said, such an obvious thing, it's full. He said, no, you didn't understand. I said to you, it's half water, half empty. No. It's full. Half with water and half with air. But he said more. Now get ready for this. This is fantastic. We all know that it's full with water and with air. But what we don't consider is, of the two, which is more important? You can live without water for, 2 days, 3 days? I don't know what it is, something like that. I'm sorry, I didn't Google it beforehand, but it must be something like that. 3 days you could probably live without water. Without air, a couple of minutes. I don't know what the record is for holding your breath. I understand there's some diver who can hold his breath for 20 minutes, but that's unusual, totally unusual. Short time. So which is more important? Which is more important? Air. Air is the essence of our lives. Remember the air of the show? That's our essence. We don't pay any attention to that. It's not visible. So we take that for granted. We take that which is most important for granted. I would apply that to all of life. Is our glass half full or half empty? Well, let me go check my stocks. This week. Let me go check my bank account. Oh, I can get an exact figure. Let me go check and see at what condition, how much my house is on sale for. Let me call up one of those agencies and find out what it goes for, so I'll know what I'm worth. What about your children? What about your life? What about your loved ones? What about the things that are crucial in life? Now, what about your relationship to Hashem? and what God gives you and the blessings that you have, all of that you don't see because you take it for granted. You don't include in the cheshbon of what you have. Your glass is full, and you are saying it's half because this part that you take for granted, and that part is the air that God has blown into you, for which you ought to say a bracha every day, just like for the food. Let me answer your question, and with this I'm going to finish. You noticed it, and it's very, very fascinating, that the difference between the two blessings is when they're said. The blessing for food is said afterwards, when you finish. The blessing for Torah is said beforehand. Food is a requirement of the body that has limitations because the body knows it can only use so much, and the rest is extra that you should not waste your time on, that you should not spend your life on. The extra is meaningless. How was the food? I had one steak. It was amazing. So I have another steak. Oh, okay. I'm going to have one more. Oh, yeah. I'm going to have one more. You are going to throw up. Your body is aware of, sensitive to the fact that excess of food, physical, material, is not only pointless, is going to destroy you because you will become addicted to that extra. I like scotch. I want you to remember that. I like scotch, so one glass is fine. I'll have another. But if you have another and another and another, A, it's to your detriment, and B, you better, v'yochalta v'savata, when you reach the stage of satiety, v'rachta, then make the bracha. However, with regard to Torah, what are you suggesting? That you make the bracha when you're finished? You're never finished! You're never finished. Theoretically, the more Torah, the better it is. So when I asked you, how long should I speak? You said it's in your hand. So I said, I'll speak just about this long. And at this point, it's not that I don't have more to say, but it's that you should realize that this is the blessing from God, that He has given us a Torah where I am, I'm allowed to say, I am 88 years old, and I have not begun to learn all there is to learn, and every day is a new adventure, and every day is more meaningful, and spirituality will get you through life with joy and with pleasure and with happiness. You will rejoice before the Lord your God. But if your goal is another steak, you'll enjoy the first one and the second one. The third one, I'm not sure about. The fourth one, I know you're going to throw up. That is amazing. And so, what should we take from all of this? We should understand our duality. I told you at the beginning of this talk that this prominent doctor, I don't mention his name because I don't know if he wants it known that he sat in with college students, but it for him represented the ultimate understanding of humanity, of human beings, of us. It is the Rosh Hashanah truth. Again, please remember, if anyone says it commemorates the day of the creation of the world, please correct them nicely, courteously. That's not true. It commemorates the day that a soul came down to earth, and that soul is a part of God, and God is within us, and God doesn't want to be lonely. God and spirituality are requirements. How should I put this? We need good food, but we also, and not also, more need soul food. May this talk inspire you to commit yourself to more and more soul food, food for the neshama. Do you know, I forgot to mention, the English word disease comes from what? It's a construct of dis-ease, lack of ease, because your neshama is not at ease. Wow. And that's the Rambam, because 90% of sickness is disease. Let us not be diseased. Let us have a refuah shlema, which is refuahs hanefesh, refuahs haguf. May our prayers partake of the duality of prayer, but may the major emphasis be, may we be inspired to be spiritually fulfilled, to be better human beings. May the ideal be Danielle and the life that she lived, short as it was, packed with so much goodness, so much of what we are saying now. And may that be true for all of us in terms of what we achieve and what we accomplish. Shana Tova to all of you.
Does anybody have any questions for the rabbi before we end?